Good afternoon, evening. We'll go ahead and call this meeting of the Santa Fe Public Schools Board of Education to order. It's 5:30. We have our board members here. Board Member Abeta says he'll just be a couple minutes late, so we will go ahead and get started with the business. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance and salute to the New Mexico flag in English and in Spanish, as well as the acknowledgement of tribal land. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Juro fidelidad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. Saludo la bandera del Estado de Nuevo México, símbolo de amistad perfecta entre culturas unidas. And the acknowledgement of tribal land. We acknowledge that the Board of Education meetings is taking place on occupied indigenous land. We acknowledge the Tesuque Pueblo lands and other tribal lands on which we stand. We honor these people, past, present, and future. We acknowledge the history and ongoing colonization where we are sitting right now in New Mexico and in our country. We acknowledge our own place in the story of colonization. Thank you very much. We will go ahead and look at approval of the agenda. We have some action items and then our main event, our board discussion and possible action on short and long-term options regarding E.J. Martinez School. Superintendent, do you need any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes.
Okay.
President Noble,
yeah.
I move approval of the agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you, Vice President Bose and Secretary Gonzalez. We have a motion and a second on the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or otherwise? Okay, we've approved the agenda. Looking at Roman numeral 2, our action items, we'll start with the consent agenda. Are there any items that any of the board members would like to ask questions about or vote on separately? And if not, can I have a motion?
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second on approval of the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Okay, we've approved the consent agenda. Action item B, we have 2025-2026 School Year Board of Education Community Committee appointments. Who was ready to make a committee appointment?
President Noble, I am not ready at this meeting. I am still working on my appointment for the CRC.
Okay. Any board members with appointments to the CRC or Audit Committee? All right. Well, no action there then. Then we will go ahead and move on to Roman numeral 3 on our agenda, E.J. Martinez short and long-term options. Welcome, Santa Fe Public Schools team. Welcome to our guests and audience. Welcome to the tens of thousands surely watching online. And we are obviously, slides will be up at some point. But just as a matter for the board of some organizing principles, this is a study session by design, a little bit more informal. The board needs to be able to have this discussion. And I really also want to say I appreciate everyone that has emailed us over the past week and few days. I think we've had a lot of good community input. Just to verify, board members, you've all received the letters and had a chance to review them. Okay, seeing lots of nodding. If we need to take a break or anything like that, we certainly can. And, you know, if for any reason it becomes necessary, I am ready to gavel a recess. But ultimately, again, I hope we can move through this and do some good work for the community tonight. With that, Superintendent, I know you and the team have been preparing, and I would say if it's amenable to the board, maybe we should, are we willing to let the presentation go through without questions and hold our questions to the end? Okay, so we'll go ahead and let the presentation proceed, and then we will have our discussion. Superintendent Griffin.
Thank you. Do we have an extra presentation that Board Member Blea could have?
I got one, thank you.
Okay,
Thank
all
you.
right, thank you. All right, well, thank you, President Noble, Vice President Bosse, board members, all of the staff members who have worked endlessly over the past week and over the weekend. Thank you very much. And a special shout out to Dr. Weaver and Mr. Romero and Mr. Bostwick. Thank you. So I just want to begin with a little history about E.J. Martinez facility because it explains why this conversation exists. E.J. was built in 1959. In the 2021 Facilities Master Plan, its program capacity was 333 students. In the 2025 updated FMP, that capacity was reduced to 301 after approximately 35% of the building was closed in 2023. Both FMP plans also show flat enrollment projections with no anticipated growth tied to the site. At the same time, EJ's roofing and HVAC systems had reached their end of useful life. As a result, the school was closed in the summer of 2024, and EJ Martinez staff and students were moved to the Chaparral location as a temporary solution. At the time of closure, repair costs were estimated at 9 to 11 million, with an additional 9 to 10 million required to bring the building into code compliance. These estimates were to restore basic functionality and compliance in a 1959 building, not for expansion or program redesign. This context matters because it shows why the district could not approach EJ as a simple repair. Instead, it had to examine broader, long-term options. Both EJ and Chaparral communities have navigated challenges with determination, professionalism, and deep commitment to students. That determination is an asset, but it's not intended as a sustainability. The ongoing duplication of spaces creates a daily strain for students and staff and limits our ability to deliver the learning environment envisioned through reimagining. This slide explains why the district's direction changed. In spring of 2024, the estimated cost to rebuild E.J. Martinez was between 14 and 18 million. Based on enrollment assumptions, construction costs at the time, and a school size of approximately 12,000 to 15,000 square feet. During the design phase, architects met with staff to clarify program needs and determined that a larger footprint was required. The design expanded by roughly 18,000 square feet. Construction costs continued to escalate statewide. When increased square footage, market escalations, and additional project conditions were combined, the estimated cost rose to approximately 35 million. Based on the information available at the time, the administration elected to move forward with the rebuild. Between 24 and 25, the district underwent 3 administrative transitions and developed a new facilities master plan. The 2025 plan showed declining enrollment and underutilized space across the district. This updated data, combined with significantly higher cost estimate, required reassessment. As a result, the district decided to not proceed with rebuilding E.J. Martinez and instead examine alternative options that better align with student needs, enrollment realities, and responsible stewardship of district resources. Enrollment projections were developed by ARC, the Architectural Research Consultants, using population data from the University of New Mexico's Geospatial and Population Studies program. These projections are not simple trend lines. They incorporate county-level population data and adjust for district-specific enrollment patterns, economic conditions, and demographic trends. The UNM data shows Santa Fe's declining population, falling birth rates, and also those things that are contributing to the rapid decline of younger age groups. The trend is expected to continue. This aligns with our experience in Santa Fe Public Schools. Enrollment has declined since 2015, with a sharp drop during the pandemic and no rebound. The 2025 Facilities Master Plan projected a district-wide decline of just over 3,000 students from the 2014 peak. As of today, we've already exceeded that decline. This is not a future risk, it is our current reality. The data does not suggest investing less in students, but investing differently, creating healthy schools, increasing flexibility, and aligning programs with how students are enrolling today. This context is essential to evaluating E.J. Martinez, not in isolation, but as a part of a district-wide strategy for sustainability and student-centered design. The next slide shows enrollment compared to the program capacity for our K-8 schools, using data from the 23-24 school year. Since that report was finalized, district enrollment has declined by an additional 1,423 students. This gap between enrollment and available capacity helps illustrate the scale of underutilized space we are managing across the district and why facility decisions must be considered in a broader system-wide context. This next slide shows enrollment and program capacity for our high schools, drawn directly from the facility master plans. Together with the K-8 data, it reinforces the district-wide patterns shaping our facility decisions. This slide provides district-wide context for the E.J. Martinez discussion. Between October of 2023 and May of 2024, all Santa Fe public school sites were evaluated by the Architectural Research Consultants with the EEA Consulting Engineers, J3 Systems, and Allied Electric. Each campus received a composite score measuring physical condition and functional adequacy aligned with district planning criteria. 2 sites scored in the excellent range. Most schools fell in the satisfactory range, and 3 sites scored borderline, indicating aging systems and a significant capital need to meet PSFA standards. The chart also reflects that FY25 state facility rankings, 9 of our schools ranked in the state's top 300 and may qualify for some state assistance through district, though the district would still share costs, and pre-K and administrative facilities are excluded from this data. In total, Santa Fe Public Schools maintains more than 2.8 million square feet across 550 acres, with an average facility age of 48 years. This is not presented as a crisis, but to emphasize why facility decisions must be prioritized, sequenced, and aligned with enrollment and program needs. E.J. Martinez is part of a broader facilities landscape, and decisions about it must reflect a district-wide responsibility. This slide comes from the June 2025 board presentation and reflects the original rebuild concept as it was scoped at the time. The proposed building was just under 20,000 square feet, designed for 142 students, with no preschool component. It included 13 classrooms, 1 art room, and 1 special education classroom. What's important is what's not included. There was no dedicated space for computers or music, no space for OT, PT, speech services, counseling, or academic interventions, and no space for instructional coaching. This was not a design flaw, but the result of rebuilding at a small scale within cost and footprint constraints. Viewed through the post-pandemic lens, the goals of reimagining, the design would have restored a building but not fully supported modern instruction or the range of student needs. This slide helps explain why the conversation shifted from can we rebuild to what kind of a learning environment are we trying to create. This slide marks the point where the rebuild concept shifted from restoring a building to fully supporting student learning. To add pre-K and serve more students, capacity increased from 142 to approximately 180 students. Site work was added, and the footprint expanded to just over 29,000 square feet. Program spaces grew from 13 to 22 to include music, computers, expanded special education, and dedicated spaces for the OT, PT, speech, counseling, the things that I said earlier. Construction costs rose sharply, with the estimated cost per square foot increasing from approximately $850 to $1,000 due to material and labor escalation. The increased scope was driven by educational requirements, not expansion for expansion's sake. This slide shows how a modest rebuild becomes a major capital investment once it's designed to meet modern student needs. All right, now we're getting into the meat of it. The options that you asked us to bring to you. We have 3 different options. Option 1 was to rebuild E.J. Martinez Elementary, and there are 4 plans with that option. Options 2 is to improve Chaparral to house 2 schools, and there are 2 plans with that one. And option 3 is temporarily move E.J. Martinez Elementary to Milagro. Option 1, rebuild E.J. Martinez Elementary School. Rebuilding E.J. Martinez Elementary is one of the core options. The next slides present 4 conceptual approaches within that pathway. Plan A, renovate the existing building. Plan A focuses on renovating the existing E.J. Martinez building rather than rebuilding. While renovations could address some system and compliance needs, the age and layout of the building significantly limit how much the learning environment can be modernized. This option maintains the elementary campus model, but offers limited opportunity to redesign programming. Plan B, the smallest scale, the 13-room school. Plan B represents a smaller scale rebuild intended to control costs. While it restores a permanent facility, it does so with limited flexibility for specialized programming, student services, or future growth. This is a lower cost option, but it also constrains our ability to adapt the school to evolving student needs. Plan C, medium scale, attempts to strike a balance between cost control and program adequacy. It improves access to support services and instructional spaces, but still requires trade-offs in flexibility and long-term adaptability. It represents a midpoint option, but one that still requires careful consideration given enrollment projections. Plan D, this was $35 million. Plan D comes closest to meeting the modern expectations for student services and instructional design. However, it also is the most expensive and would require significant reallocations from bond priorities. Again, given enrollment trends and district-wide facility needs, this option raises important questions about scale and stewardship. Summary of Plan A through D. This slide presents all 4 rebuild options for E.J. Martinez side by side. Seeing them together helps clarify the key trade-offs across cost, size, student capacity, program support, timeline, and district-wide impact. Each option reflects a different balance between educational programming, fiscal responsibility, and enrollment realities. All right, getting into the second option, E.J. Martinez and Chaparral remain at the current campus. Option 2 would keep both E.J. Martinez and Chaparral on the current campus, supporting 2 independent elementary schools on a single site. Achieving this would require extensive renovations over several years, including upgrades to parking, traffic areas, new kitchen and common areas, additional restrooms, and meeting spaces for both school communities. These challenges drive both costs and timeline, which are detailed in the next slide. Educationally, this option preserves the elementary campus model and maintains current school locations. At the same time, prolonged construction would impact both communities, and the shared campus setup limits flexibility for program redesign and innovation. Option 2A, so there's two plans under the Chaparral E.J. Martinez shared site. 2A is a short-term partial solution to temporarily address some system failures within current funding. Only half of the building HVAC is currently scheduled for the Chaparral wing. In the E.J. wing, mitigation would include removing sinks and drinking fountains and capping sanitary piping to reduce odors, leaving classrooms without water access. Skylights could be added, but window lighting would remain limited. Additional HVAC would be purchased for the EJ site. These measures would be implemented over the next year in order to reduce some of the immediate concerns, but do not resolve long-term issues. Option 2B represents a full renovation of E.J. Martinez wing with the intent of making the Chaparral site a permanent shared campus. To complete this work, portable buildings would be required to temporarily house E.J. Martinez students, staff, and administration during construction. Those portables would take up most of the available open playground area, would require utility extensions, security fencing, sidewalks, and other site infrastructure. This option would address long-term facility issues more comprehensively than a partial solution, but it also introduces significant disruption, extended construction timelines, and a loss of outdoor space during the renovation period. Both school communities would be affected by construction over multiple years. This slide illustrates a long-term solution and the physical footprint at the Chaparral shared site and what it would mean in practice. The next slide highlights site-level improvements that would be required to support long-term shared campus at Chaparral. Expanding parking would be necessary to accommodate 2 full school communities, including staff, families, and service providers. A new service entrance would be required to improve traffic flow and separate daily operations from student arrival and dismissal. Option 3, temporarily relocation of E.J. Martinez into the Milagro 200 wing. The third option would temporarily relocate E.J. Martinez to the 200 wing at Milagro. From a facilities perspective, minimal renovation would be needed to accommodate E.J. as a distinct K-6 community. Interior separation from the middle school provides clear boundaries between grade spans. New playgrounds would be added and some interior rooms converted for administrative and student needs. Drawings, costs, and schedules are shown on the next slides. This slide outlines the security and access upgrades for relocating E.J. Martinez to the Milagro site. Upgrades focus on controlling access and separating pedestrian, vehicle, and bus circulation. These measures reflect standard best practices for campus safety and are part of designing a site for shared use, not a response to any specific incident. This slide shows the proposed playground design for Milagro site organized by grade span. This layout also clearly separates elementary playgrounds from middle school play areas, supporting supervision and student comfort. This slide shows the 200-wing floor plan and proposed interior modifications to support E.J. Martinez as a distinct elementary school. Additional doors would define the wing's entrance, creating a self-contained elementary zone within a shared facility. Existing restrooms would be retrofitted and a new restroom added to room 205. This third option creates a self-contained wing for E.J. Martinez with a functional capacity of 204 students. It includes a remodeled kindergarten classroom with bathroom, new K-6 playgrounds, and targeted security upgrades, including west side fencing. Bless you. This approach supports core programming while maintaining safety and school identity. In December of 2025, the board approved a $2.5 million reallocation to address immediate facility needs at Chaparral and E.J. Martinez. This included furniture replacement, Phase 1 HVAC upgrades, a turf field at Chaparral, and kitchen renovations. These investments addressed health, safety, and operational priorities, but they do not determine the long-term direction for E.J. Martinez or impact the options currently under consideration. And last, I just want to thank the board for your thoughtfulness and your careful consideration that you've already invested in this work. While there has been pressure for a quick decision, you've spent countless hours studying solutions that minimize the impact on student learning. I'm happy to clarify data, walk through assumptions, or provide reference materials as needed. My goal tonight is not to rush a decision, but to ensure a shared understanding of options, trade-offs, and what moving forward on any of them would require. With that, I'll turn it back to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Questions? Vice President Bozay?
Thank you, President Noble. I just have before we get into deep discussion, I have a quick question on page 13. That's the smaller scale EJ rebuilds at the original sites. And I'm wanting to clarify, we have that projected cost at 16.2 million, which, if I'm understanding correctly, was the same number that we were given in March of 2022, but construction costs have gone up? Or, so shouldn't that price have gone up also?
Dr. Weaver, would you like to answer that?
It does reflect basically the same size. What we've done is refined a whole lot in terms of our costs and what we can do for that amount of money. So we're actually getting a little bit bigger footprint in this case. Part of that does come from the fact that a lot of the special needs or special programming spaces that we would put in are more costly. And so when you take all those out, you get down to some more base costs that mean your dollars go a little bit more per square foot. So yeah, looking at the same basic idea, but much refined in terms of ideas of the program.
Okay, so that price, even though we talked about $850 per square foot in February of 2024, and we're saying it's now $1,000 per square foot, that's reflected in this cost estimate.
It is, although the $1,000 per square foot figure that we were being hit with at that time has since backed off, and we're actually finding that our square foot costs have gone down in the last about a year, 8 months, and it looks like they're stabilizing, and we're seeing that in the long term, at least for the next couple of years, we feel like we're going to hold a better price on our
So it's closer to what now?
$880 to $900.
Okay. So that is what we're seeing on page 16, that price range per square foot in all of those price estimates. Okay, thank you.
Question? To the board, yes. Go ahead, Board Member Beta.
Yeah, this is for staff. Is there a standard when you're planning for buildings, like cost per student
like an average, like a national standard that schools use? Like, for example, if I just take Plan A from slide 16 and I divide 26,412 by 330, you get around 86,000 per student. Plan B is a little more expensive, 114,000 per student. C is 139,000 per student. D is 175,000 per student. How do we determine how much to spend per student on a facility? Is there a standard that we follow, or we don't, it's not done like that?
Yes, please, Mr. West.
There's not a national standard that I'm aware of that says it's like that, because it's so regionally driven, and we in Santa Fe are near the top. For not being in a large metropolitan area, we're paying prices that are similar to some of the parts of the country that are, right at the very peak of construction costs. I don't think there is a standard that says you should spend this much per student because of the huge variation in what people tend to put into their buildings, right? We also have a very high standard that the sustainability aspects that we plug in, I think, push our costs higher to try to try to build structures that are going to last and that are very efficient. So things like that, I think, factor into those prices being higher than a lot of places. Maybe not San Diego, but we're
Okay, and then just for clarification, did I hear in the presentation that the average age of our schools are 42 years old?
I believe it's 45.
48?
Yeah.
48 years old. Okay, all right, thank you. That's all for now.
Board Member Blaya.
Thank you, President Noble and Vice President Bose. I do have a question. I don't know if anybody could answer this. Is there any student performance data that would be impacted? Like, do we have any projections of how students will perform in any of these options, or not really? Like, in other words, are we going to see, like, what kind of student performance increase or decrease are we going to have in each of these situations? Do we have any kind of feel for that?
I'm processing. So what I hear you saying is that for Plan A of rebuilding the school, what would the performance data look like?
Right, like, would the kids do better? Like, in other words, would they do, I'm just curious how the performance data might be impacted by these options.
Yeah.
Madam President, Board Member Galea, Superintendent Griffin, prognosticating performance impact is a little bit difficult, but what we do know from research is that extended interruptions do have negative impact on student performance.
May I follow up? So in terms of extended delays, in terms of the options presented, from your research, do you see that any one of these options is going to have greater extended interruptions? Or do you feel like, I mean, I know you just saw this too, I'm just wondering if you could, I know I'm putting you on the spot, Beata, and I'm sorry, but I'm just curious.
As we look at the various options, there are time allotments for each one of those options. I think one of the things that you as a board need to think through carefully is what are the trade-offs associated with those time allotments. Like I said, it's very difficult for me to prognosticate you and give you a number of the potential impact.
There is research, and I don't have it in front of me, so I can't quote it specifically, but that suggests that with every transition that a student makes, they tend to lose about a half a year of learning. And so when you look at moving from preschool to kindergarten, there's a decline in learning, and those transitions do add to learning loss.
Okay, and as one last follow-up, in terms of how the district is doing as a whole in terms of proficiency and growth, this whole thing seems like it's a disruption to that in a way. So how can we minimize any further disruptions to that? That's really what I want to know. And I know that's kind of a hard question to answer, but my goal here tonight is to ensure that we have a decision, or at least a direction, that's going to maximize as much as possible student outcomes. That's my goal.
Deputy Romero, would you like to address that?
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I didn't hear all of it because I was kind of Googling some stuff, but it does impact, right? Like short-term shifts impacts student attendance, it increases anxiety, it affects culture. Is that what you're talking?
Yes.
And then long-term effects, I think, would continue to perpetuate those feelings of anxiety and effects on culture and attendance
Perfect.
and data and
Okay.
performance.
Okay, thank you, that's it for now.
Mr. Romero, did you want to weigh in on this, or you good?
I just quickly wanted to point out that we have construction ongoing at Mandela International Magnet School, and they have a lot to deal with there, and they have since the beginning of the school year. There's been water interruptions, cancellation of schools. Those are to be expected on active construction sites, so just to give context to that. Thank you.
Can I follow up?
Sure. And then Dr. Gonzalez, I got you.
Is there any safety issues? Are you addressing safety issues as they come up? I'm assuming.
Board Member Blea, Superintendent, and other board members, of course, yes. Those are first on our mind. We have a strong safety plan on the construction side, of course.
Thank you.
Dr. Gonzalez.
I didn't stay the whole night last time when you discussed this, but looking at these 4 plans for EJ, we're talking about tearing down that building and building a new school? Is that what we're talking about?
Dr. Gonzalez, the Plan A is for
Renovate the
renovating the
building.
current location,
But
and
the other
then
3,
are for a tear down and a rebuild, except for the gym. The gym remains the same in all 4 plans.
okay, thank you.
And just to clarify something, the plans A through D, there is still a temporary solution needed.
Correct.
Because what I see in that chart, in part on slide, there's the grid of A through D. On 16, this construction timeline is the same for plans A through D, which begins January 2027, a year from now, presumably with plans drawn up in the interim, and with completion in 2028, so for the 28-29 school year. So just to be clear, there is still the temporary issue on any of the plans A through D, correct?
That's correct, President Noble. The board asked us to be able to research what it would take to rebuild E.J. Martinez, and that was option 1.
Yes, thank you. Vice President Bozé.
I just would like to add on to that, it seems also that option 2B is that same timeline as far as expanding at Chaparral and rebuilding there.
Thank you. And Superintendent, I appreciate it's a good summary. It's all of the information the board asked for. Appreciate that on the 3 options. Did you consider, or are there any other options that you've thought about and that we might want to talk about? Because truly to the board, you know, we asked for these 3 things from the superintendent. We have some work to do, and I guess just to say, I'm not sure we got the 3 options necessarily right. So I am also interested in any out-of-the-box thinking around other options that we can do, especially given that a number of these options do not even meet the immediate need issue, which is sort of what has been driving us. So sorry,
Yeah.
Superintendent.
No, thank you,
There
President
was a
Noble.
question a little
Yes, I
ways
got the
back.
question, I did. So if it would please the board, if you could turn to tab 13, Midtown Schools floor maps. The board requested some data, which is in this book that's in front of you to be able to reference tonight. What we have here is different floor plans. You have the Chaparral Elementary, you have EJ Elementary. The next slide is important to notice because Aspen Community School is one of the schools that we considered for creating a school within a school for EJ Martinez, temporary or permanently. It was one of the schools that had capacity. It is important to note, though, when you look through this floor plan, how the spaces are used. Originally, when I toured the school with some EJ Martinez staff, that the upstairs, we were thinking that could house the school within a school, but there wasn't enough classrooms to be able to do that, and we would have to move Aspen's Kiva program, which takes up 2 classrooms, and also some of the middle school programming. If we did decide to do that end of the building, even more space would need to be moved. We have to recognize that Kiva is a program that has 2 classrooms. Those students are 18 to 21, and they are able to do some work-based work. They're able to work basically as teacher assistants throughout the school day to get some work experience, and so having access to the younger grades is great for that program. There's also 5, where are you? There you are. There's 5 high needs classrooms that are currently held in Aspen who would also have to be relocated. Our high needs, highly structured classrooms, is that the?
Correct, and superintendent, those 5, 2 of those are Kiva, so there's 5
Okay.
total.
Okay, so 3 of those would need to be moved. Our highly structured classrooms are in high demand. We just had, how many students enroll?
Since Christmas, we had 11 new.
So we have 11 new students for our highly structured classrooms. We are down to 1 space left at El Dorado. We are opening 2 more highly structured classrooms at 2 of our other sites. And that is only meeting current demand. We will have to look for more space to be able to include more highly structured classrooms. So Aspen is a possibility, but it creates a lot of moving targets and it's a ripple effect across the district, and it's really impacting a very high needs population of students. We also looked at, in 2 more maps, we looked at the possibility of Gonzales, which also has the space needed to be able to consolidate EJ Martinez into it. It's not really set up to be a school within a school model. However, at Gonzales, we have the ZIA program, which is our behavior program for kindergarten through 8th grade students. And that program would have to move if we did put EJ Martinez into the Gonzales building. That program it's important for those students to have access to their general education peers. So as they move through their behavior plans and their IEP goals, they need to be able to start graduating out of the program eventually, and they need to be able to do lunches with peers or specials with peers or some of the general education classes with peers. And so moving Zia from Gonzales also created some hardships with a very fragile population of students.
Thank you. Go ahead, Board Member Beta.
Can you remind me again? What is the current enrollment at EJ Martinez?
Let's go to tab. I want to give you.
$166? And again, I think this was given to us early on, meetings
What tab is
ago.
it? Thank you.
How many are transfers into EJ and how many actually live
So,
in the
Tab
district?
7 will give you all of the home zone, the transfers, and total enrollment for our schools.
So for EJ, 66 are transfers into EJ?
Correct.
Okay. So really 100 then students would be the population of EJ if it wasn't for students being transferred in.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
So we got a lot of emails. At last count, I think between 60 and 70 is what I counted. And surprisingly, a large majority said maybe the students need to be just transferred into and absorbed into other existing schools. How would that impact the schools? Can we do that? Is that an option that wasn't part of the original 3 options?
Yes, so we have policy for rezoning and consolidation and moving the students, and I did not print the slide from the previous slide deck. There was a slide that had, and I can get it for you and bring it up, that showed where all of the EJ Martinez students who were zoned for EJ Martinez, where they lived. And it showed some clusters around Chaparral that would be rezoned for Chaparral. It showed some clusters around Aspen, and then kind of sporadic along the side where you might, you'd be looking for schools that have capacity, like Atalaya. There were a couple of El Dorado. So rezoning would put those students at those schools, and we as a team would need to look at schools with capacity to be able to put them into. One of the things that I said in the previous board meeting was that when we, if there are 10 third graders that we rezone and 5 of them go to Chaparral and 3 of them go to Aspen and 2 of them go to Atalaya, then the students that are currently at Atalaya in 3rd grade, if they're at capacity, if there's any transfers into Atalaya, it bumps them off because now EJ students are zoned for Atalaya.
And if we were to make a decision like that this evening, or could we make a decision like that this evening and it be implemented in time for next school year?
Yes.
Okay. See, I had another question. Okay, that's it for now. Thank you.
One of the challenges with rezoning that I just want to remind the board is that those resources get spread out amongst those schools too. And I know that's a hard concept to understand because originally when we were going through this process, I was sitting with EJ Martinez teachers and I'm like, well, of course you would still have like a job. Like there's still those kids, you would go with those kids. But then, and I realized and I started thinking like the kids don't all go together. So the teacher would still have a job because we have a deficit of teachers, but they wouldn't necessarily get moved with those kids. Those kids get moved across and then those resources. So if there is an FTE tab in here, if EJ Martinez has a 0.5 counselor, that 0.5 gets moved to wherever the needs are at. And so you might have a 0.2, a 0.2, and a 1.
So the rezoning option, teachers would just be placed somewhere else. They won't lose their job. They won't.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Do we know how many families right now are looking to leave EJ as it is organically, just on their own?
Can you please repeat families?
Well, they're kids. They're
Yeah.
moving their kids out right now because of transfer. Because I've gotten calls from people that said they're doing that as we are. So do we know how many are doing that organically?
Do we have that tab? Go ahead, Sonia.
Hello, okay. So what you're asking is, have they already put in for a transfer for this year?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, they have. We have, right now, 16 students that are currently attending that have asked for transfers, and it's through a variety of grade levels.
Okay.
Yes.
Vice President Bozay.
Thank you, President Noble. Dr. Griffin, in tab 14, where we have some of our policies, the board policy 534 that's here in our binder is not our updated policy 534. And I'm looking at this because it's being discussed and because we've also previously talked about this, but when we updated Board Policy 534 in August of 2023, we did note in that policy that,
Here.
that, sorry,
Is
I
there
had
a-
it a minute
Is
ago.
there ways for someone to please help Mr. Abey to bring it up on the board policy
It would be
534?
wonderful if we could print, I was looking for that as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Vice President Bozay, the updated policy from
I
August.
had it pulled up this weekend, so it was,
I need to be able to print for the board.
oh, this is what I wanted to read. The superintendent will develop an administrative regulation to allow students attending a school subject to closure to have a priority to enroll in another school through the transfer process that is consistent with state law. We've talked about these priority transfers, and we explicitly named it in that policy for a reason. So I just want to highlight that.
Thank you. Would you like,
Dr. Gonzalez. I'd really love to read that policy.
Madam President,
can you print 5?
Superintendent,
Thank you.
if we move them to Milagro, would that start next fall?
Yes, the work would be done over the summer, and the next school year, EJ would be housed at Milagro.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Board Member Blair.
Thank you, President Noble. So we're talking about EJ, but also in terms of Chaparral, because Chaparral's staying there. Anything that needs to be fixed for Chaparral that we've already kind of talked about, is that still going to happen for Chaparral? That will happen and it'll be ready also by the fall, right?
The board approved those reallocations in December, and that work is already being planned. Thank you. I was thinking of allocated and those, yeah.
We have a contractor in place to do the HVAC upgrade, which was the big one there. What we haven't been able to tell them, because all we can do is one half or the other. So we kind of have them on standby to decide which way to go. We've got a contractor working on the playground, so we can have an idea of exactly how that will fit, price, et cetera. We make pretty good shape there. Furniture, we've already started to evaluate, so we can get a new furniture. That will happen again over the summer. The one that would probably wait would be the kitchen remodel. It's difficult to even think about how to do that until we know which direction we're going, and it's a pretty major overhaul of that piece of the building.
Okay, thank you.
I'm trying to touch and wait. Go ahead, Vice President Bozay.
Thank you, President Noble. Dr. Griffin, can we just go back and, can you talk a little bit more about Aspen and the programs that are at Aspen and what it would look like to house those programs in some of the vacant spaces at Milagro, and what the pros and cons of that might be.
Yes.
Just so that, I think that that's something that came up in some of the emails that we received, so that might be helpful to talk about a little more.
Okay, so the Kiva program, if we were to move it to Milagro, the 2 classrooms would be, I'm assuming, put into the 200 wing. The students who have access to younger peers, not peers, but younger children to be able to help with kindergarten first PE, they go in and help with that. They would no longer have access to that. They would have middle school students that they could possibly become teacher aides for. It's a little bit different need. The added life skills rooms, those for highly structured, again, 3 more rooms, so now we're up to 5 rooms in that 200 wing. And those students, some of them would be 7th and 8th graders, so that would be fine for them to be able to have access to their general education peers, but the kindergarten through 6th graders would not. And that's a problem when it comes to just implementing IEPs and best practices.
Could that student population stay at Aspen to have access to the same age peers?
When you looked at Aspen Space, they had 3 extra classrooms. And so now they would have 5 extra classrooms. So it's not going to accommodate EJ. We're going to have to move more of those highly structured classrooms.
Yeah. There are 3 highly structured classrooms?
There are 5.
2 are Kiva.
Yes, there are 3 other highly structured classrooms, a K-4, a 5-8, and then what we call our homebound instruction class / online hybrid, which is literally, right now I believe it's 6 through 12, based on various needs.
Okay.
And is the Kiva program in addition to that?
And then the Kiva are the 2 additional programs.
Okay, thank you.
In that same vein, looking at the ZIA program in Gonzales, do you know how many students are in the ZIA program? And it looks like there's 5 classrooms being used in the ZIA program there. Is that correct?
There are 32 students in the ZIA program.
30?
32.
32 students in the ZIA program. Got it, thank you.
President Noble?
Yeah, go ahead, Vice
And-
President. Rhoda.
And just so that I'm keeping it in my head, the ZIA program students are the one that need access to same age peers
Correct.
to transfer
Correct.
out when they graduate.
Correct.
Okay.
We have compliance that we're working through with the state, and that is part of that.
President Noble?
Go ahead.
This is an amazing binder.
It really is.
It's magical.
Like any question I've ever had is just about in here. So thank you. I know that you have all worked really hard, and it's great to have answers at our fingertips and have all the important people in the room to answer the questions. I can tell that you looked really thoroughly at all of the options with a lot of care and intentionality, and I really appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this. And again, I said it last week, and I want to say it again, all of the folks in this room that have walked on this journey with us. It's been challenging, it's been hard, it's important, and I hope that we can do our best for everyone.
Superintendent, somebody brought to my attention that the numbers have changed on EJ's enrollment from the last presentation. Do you have any awareness of that? I hope we have accurate numbers now.
These numbers are accurate as of yesterday,
Okay.
and we have had some students come and go in the meantime. Not since yesterday. Maybe.
Go ahead, Board Member Blair.
And I'm sure it's somewhere in the magic binder, but what our ELL population at EJ Martinez look like, and what is the ELL population at Chaparral right now?
Sonia, would you be able to look that up?
Yes, it's also.
Oh, that's right.
There's a section on the demographics of all the schools.
I do remember that. Thank
Eight.
you.
No?
Tab 8?
Yes.
Madam President,
Go ahead.
Board Member Blaya, were you able to locate it?
Yeah. Sorry.
No.
Go ahead, Dr. Gonzalez.
Sorry.
I don't understand this. It says that at EJ Martinez, there's 85% Caucasian and 83% Hispanic, so I don't think you can.
That's a lot of percent.
That doesn't really make sense to me.
Mm.
Are Hispanics considered in the Caucasian as
Yes.
well?
From a race perspective,
Okay,
yes.
so,
Sonia, go ahead and speak to that.
Yes, so when we do our state reporting, those are two different categories, but the Hispanic students tend to fall also within the Caucasian category as
Yeah.
well.
Go ahead.
Looking at EJ's population of economic disadvantage and homeless, do we know how this population is going to be impacted by all this? Do we have any kind of idea, or have we talked to the families at these schools about this?
That's a great question. Does anyone want to take that question? I wish Sue O'Brien was here to answer that with our Adelante program. Deputy Romero, would you like to speak to that?
Superintendent, sorry, President Noble, there have not been conversations, general conversations with families about all the options, but there have not been conversations specifically around our homeless students or economically disadvantaged.
Okay. Does transportation fall under economically disadvantaged? Is that a criteria for
I apologize. No, it is not a determination. Transportation is not tied to that subgroup. I apologize. We do provide support if they need. Okay.
No, I meant like, is it going to present a transportation challenge if, okay.
Assistant Superintendent.
Yes, may add that our students that are experiencing homelessness under McKinney-Vento Act, the district is required to provide transportation as needed. So if those students were rezoned, if the student is considered homeless, the district would provide bus transportation.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Board Member Blaya, previously you asked how many students had applied for the lottery so far. The number 16 that I gave you are students that are currently attending EJ that are zoned for EJ. There's an additional 8 students that also applied that attend EJ, but actually have a different home zone school, so 24 altogether.
Do we know how many full-time substitutes? I'm sure we do, right? When we said that, how many are full-time substitute teachers at EJ right now? How many full-time substitute teachers?
I think they just, did
We currently do not have any full-time substitutes as part of our FTE budget.
Okay, so they're all regular full-time teachers?
Yes, however, we do have substitutes that do, we do have substitutes that do attend EJ Martinez to cover very varied absences for teachers throughout every week.
Like sick leave?
Through our normal ESS programming that provides the substitutes for all schools, but we do not have a permanent substitute that is part of our FTE budget.
Okay, thank you.
Madam President, so going back to tab 5, it has the school population from 2016 to current, and EJ Martinez started at 303, then went down to 290, then went down to 282, 278, 240, 208, 200, 191, 169, and now with the transfer requests, it's going to go down to 145. So it just steadily continues to decline.
Like every other school.
Like every other school. Yeah.
Well, but this is a little different because these are people, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
In my opinion, it's a little different because these are organic, this is organic data, right? This is not population control or anything like that. That's not population data or whatever. It's families leaving by choice, right?
This is an interesting year because I think due to everything that's going on right now and the decisions that need to be made, I think some families are preparing themselves to have a potential place to land based on whatever decision is made. They don't have to accept the lottery seat. And even if they do have the lottery seat, they receive the lottery seat, they also have an opportunity to opt out of taking the lottery seat later on as well. But I think some of these families, my gut feeling is these families are just preparing. I don't, because of the different grade levels, I don't assume that they would leave if this was a regular school year and they had their home school to, to go to.
Okay, thank you. Based upon Midtown enrollment, which are just Midtown.
Will you make sure you've got a mic on, just so people can hear?
So based on, I think this is the Midtown enrollment page, the one that Member Abeta was referencing. These 4 schools, I mean, obviously they're declining, a bunch of different reasons for that. But in terms of direction, and I know we're not here to talk about long-term necessarily, but this is part and parcel of where we're at in terms of looking at a long-term plan as well. So it's not just playing Parcheesi, it's basically we have to figure this out with thought towards a long-term plan, in my opinion. So I know we're not going to come up with a long-term plan tonight, but I mean, these 4 schools have to be addressed, in my opinion. So 5?
well, there's 6 total if you do one.
Yeah, we're going to have to look at this a little bit more holistically.
I mean, there it is, the elephant, if you will, is the declining enrollment. The declining enrollment across the district, particularly in Midtown schools. And I keep coming back to the superintendent's presentation, which is something I think, the folks on the CRC will be well familiar with on slide 7. But Nava is one of the 3 in the borderline facility score. And then EJ is just over the line on the satisfactory facility score. Chaparral is a little higher in the satisfactory arena, and on and on. But, again, the average age being 40-some years of our facilities, the enrollment numbers, and that tab 5 is pretty striking, being what they are. We have the big issue sort of on the table tonight. And I don't know sort of where this leaves us, but I look at, and we all got a copy of the updated Policy 534 realignment, which was, again, one of the products of the reimagining process. And, we did have health and safety issues in the EJ facility. I think when we took the decision to move out, there were already areas of the building cordoned off, and I recall it was the sort of view, we were just sort of hoping there wasn't another giant snow that would cave the roof in that winter, and getting to that summer and the move to Chaparral. There's a nuance potential here that, and I'm staring at, again, I really appreciate this binder and all the information here on tab 7. Behind the transfer data, which has a blue tab on it, we have many pages of what's called home zone versus transfer student that lists school by school, grade level by grade level, how many resident students there are, how many transfers there are, how many total students, and the percent of the transfer rate here. And, I'm seeing things like apparently second grade is small in a bunch of places. We can see some of the population bubbles here. And of course, the current 6th graders, who are a big class at EJ, 28, will be moving on to 7th grade. We have, it looks like, 4 home zone students in the pre-K, 12 in kindergarten, et cetera, and we've talked about Milagro even. I still like the idea of Milagro as a K-8 to align better as a comprehensive middle school with Ortiz. Sorry, yes, a 6-8. I do mean a 6-8. Thank you, Vice President Bose.
Important distinction.
It is, very much so. A 6-8 to have middle school, 2 comprehensive middle schools as grades 6, 7, and 8. So just to say, I'm sort of looking at some of these particulars and where there's capacity. And again, the slide you referenced, Superintendent, was a good one of the map of the existing students. And, I've heard anecdotally of folks wanting to go to El Dorado because they're closer to El Dorado sometimes, even if zoned for EJ. I don't know. We could look at that, but ultimately, we see it in the rebuild options that the fulsome program is complicated and expensive. And I think Vice President Bose was very articulate at a previous meeting about the equity of not providing a fulsome program and the concerns about providing a bare bones school. But again, I find myself wanting And I hear Board Member Blea, you asking for a lot of that sort of on-the-ground knowledge with the specific families. And I find myself looking for a more nuanced solution if that might be possible.
On that, President Noble, how many sixth graders would go to EJ next year if we had an EJ? So how many fifth graders do we have could be in sixth next year?
And again, just for folks watching, let's use our mics. I think you've got one, Ms. Gunter.
So there
Yeah.
are 21 fifth graders that will go to sixth grade at EJ next year.
Thank you.
President Noble? Yes, go ahead. Thank you. So, just so that I understand, when I look at Milagro, 61% are economically disadvantaged and 10% are homeless. Can I get some context as to how those are determined?
So for the homeless component, I believe that the families work with a program called Adelante. And once they go and through the different requirements, that's when that label is placed on them. I'm not quite sure what all of those elements are that they have to, have in order to be classified as that. But as far as economically disadvantaged, that's based on the free and reduced lunch, and if the students qualify for that.
If I may, President Noble, before we do anything, I want to say to the population at Milagro Middle School, thank you for taking care of our kids.
Vice President Bozo?
Thank you, President Noble. I think we're trying to be, you use the word nuanced, and we're talking about sixth graders, and I think, that was sort of a thing that I had landed on in December when we'd heard a lot from the Milagro families. And I visited Milagro this week, and it's an incredible facility. It has so much potential. They need more resources, they need more teachers, they could serve more students. Beautiful, beautiful programming that could happen in that school that our kids absolutely deserve the access to. And so, that's a really important takeaway from this experience. Whatever we do as we're talking about Midtown, we have to think about that. How can we really make that the robust school that the community deserves? I grew up in a restaurant, so there's a kitchen room there that has stoves and kitchens and no teacher. There's a beautiful theater, no teacher. There's so much opportunity, and we're leaving that all on the table, I fear, because we've spread ourselves so thin. And I know that these are hard discussions that we're going to have to continue to engage in, but there's promise and opportunity on the other side of those hard decisions if we can just make it there.
Dr. Gonzalez. Madam President, reading the letters and all, I just feel like the EJ's community wants to stay together. And I'm very torn about this because I don't want to see them separated, and a lot of my schools have a lot of transfers in, and that'll change that whole thing. not an easy decision to make here. But I do want to think about keeping them together.
Vice President Bozay?
Thank you. I would like to echo Dr. Gonzalez's sentiments. I've even, in preparing for this meeting and the discussions that we might be having and trying to be flexible and continue to evolve my thinking around this, you know, I wondered if, in the spirit of trying to keep the kids together, because we talk so much about emotional well-being and the impact that trauma and uncertainty and instability has on kids and their learning. Is there a way for those peer relationships to maintain as much as possible if kids were absorbed into Chaparral as a school facility? I understand that might, and maybe people don't want to do that, but maybe there's a way to maintain as much of that as possible, and maybe part of that is moving sixth grade to Milagro to make more room at Chaparral. And again, only you know, as a next year solution, because we have to do this hard Midtown work and think about the larger district issues about declining enrollment. And perhaps we take the route of one of these things that has been outlined here as a longer term solution, but keeping kids together as much as possible without disrupting other school communities. Again, I'm just, you know, trying to pull things out that might be some sort of compromise.
Thank you, Vice President Bose. With the option of possibly moving sixth grade to Milagro, originally when I heard that idea, it was to move E.J. Martinez's sixth grade class to Milagro, which concerned me to have just one sixth grade class operating in a middle school. Typically, when you have, I did this in my previous work, I did move sixth grade up to the middle schools, but it was six sixth grade classes that were moved to the middle school, so you could have some co-teachers, and it was done in a way that those students were kept, and I would say almost in a bubble, separate from the other students, because sixth graders, they need transitions, but they do not need as many transitions as a seventh or eighth grader. So having two, you would have basically 60 sixth graders almost on an island by themselves, which it just is a little concerning to me with just such a small population of sixth graders and having to navigate. Usually sixth grade has a separate lunch. They are invited to do sports and after-school activities and dances, but schedules are kept different. Then they're not thrown into, it's like junior high model versus middle school model. And a comprehensive middle school would keep sixth graders separate. And the other part of that was, can EJ be absorbed into Chaparral? Is there somebody that can speak to the capacity and the current renovations that would be needed for the, was it the 1979 side? When was the first side built?
The original building was built in about 1970. And then the other section is about 20 plus years newer. The original section is 45, 50%. It's not 50, but it's in the high 40s% of the entire building. And by rights, we were going to talk seriously about knocking it down a few years back so that we could just rebuild that whole section with something that was decent, because there's so many problems with that. I don't think the I think if you're talking about moving them all into one end of the building, I don't think that's realistic. I think you'd have to figure out a temporary solution or a temporary location for a fair number of students for probably about 2 years.
Can we look at the floor plan that's under tab 13? Because I see and understand, because I've walked through that wing of the building that's on the right side of our picture. It's unclear to me what's happening on the left side because lots of those say vacant. Is this not up to date or current utilization?
Next page, maybe.
This is current?
Mr. Romero, do you want to speak to these maps? I know you did the best you could with the information you had.
Certainly. Dr. Griffin, Board President, Board members, the top drawing that says Chaparral Elementary School Year 2023 to 2024 at the bottom right.
That was before they moved
That
in.
was from the facility master plan. And
Okay.
then we wanted to give you a current version on
Okay.
the second page, which
Okay.
is how it's currently occupied.
Thank you, that's super helpful. I'm gonna look
And,
this carefully.
There's a capacity of the building that, from the facilities master plan, was 454 students. But of course, you understand the duplication of spaces in 2 schools makes that different.
Thank you.
Board Member Blaya?
To clarify though, if they were absorbed, there wouldn't be duplication. Correct or no?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Although, where there might be one first grade classroom right now at Chaparral, if there's 40 kids, there needs to be 2 first grade classrooms. So it's not everything duplicated. I mean, I guess I'm gonna look, or maybe ask the same question about Aspen, if we're talking about spaces that could house the classes staying together as much as possible.
Aspen currently has 3 empty classrooms.
If we turn to the drawing that's indicating Aspen on the second page after that, after the pink tab, I don't know the number on it. Anyway, the vacant classrooms, you'll see are color coded. And the vacants are this kind of a pinkish, dark pinkish color. And we're counting 5 vacant classrooms. Or 4, I'm sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4. At
Okay.
the top of the drawing, you'll see that.
But we need, I mean, I'm gonna try to find the tab here, because it's more than just vacant classrooms. We have some classrooms in the district that have 10 kids in them and could absorb another 12 kids without needing a whole nother classroom if they're in the same grade level. So I'm trying to find that information. It's not just empty
Enrollment.
space, it's how is that space being used,
Teacher ratio.
as far as classroom, grade level.
Vice President Bosse, tab 8. And it'll be the second little tab behind for teacher ratio. I believe that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, I'm also kind of looking at the numbers in tab 3.
Okay.
And again, then of course we have the numbers by grade level too. So Superintendent, just asking about the 6, 7, 8. I realize it's not in here, but is that how Ortiz operates? The 6th grade is separate and?
That is correct. Ortiz has their own wing that is separate, and they have a separate recess as well.
Okay.
And the 7th and 8th grade do not have recess.
Go ahead, Board Member Beta.
If we said we were gonna rezone all the kids, what kind of fiscal impact would that have on the district? Would it, and then, I mean, because all these other options, they cost them $2 million to do this. This is sounding like the easiest solution because we're trying to find a way to keep this school together, and maybe it's just not possible. So if we said, okay, we're gonna redistrict, we're gonna close the school, you gotta redistrict all the kids, practically, what does that look like tomorrow?
For sure.
And what does that look like for the next 3 months? And
Mr. Halford, would you like to answer that fiscal impact of rezoning?
Board Member Abeta, we definitely would have to see exactly where they fall out. Part of the budget process is we have a determination, a projection of where the students will fall per grade, and we apply the CBA PTRs, pupil-teacher ratios, and at that point, there could be where it might trigger an EA for the class. There's certain, when it exceeds a certain number, it requires an EA. In some cases, it may require, if the numbers are large enough to where that's not possible, it could trigger a splitting of classrooms, but of course then, you know, it all dependent on space of the particular building.
I would just add to that, it's really just shifting resources to the sites that would be impacted, so I don't think that there would be a huge impact to the budget.
And there wouldn't.
Just shifting the resources.
And there wouldn't be a need to say upgrade a school at $2 million or $3 million or.
Sorry. I think overall it would, I think any additions would be offset by any savings. I think overall it would probably result in a savings. You know, obviously, regardless of the size, each school has its own administrator, has its own administrative assistant and so forth. There could also be some economies of scale realized when, you know, sometimes we have schools that are so small that we have traveling FTE that are assigned at multiple sites. Of course, that could be minimized if there are less sites for them to travel, or if the numbers dictate not a need for it. It's usually driven by there's just not enough students to have a full-time FTE at the site, and then some programs like I think I heard, you know, some empty space or whatever, you know, that perhaps the counts would be such that there could be an FTE assigned. I think I heard a music room and so forth. You know, it's possible that could trigger, you know, the need for a full-time FTE or at that site. It all really depends on, you know, where those students would be located. Of course, the transfer decisions that may result as well. It's kind of, but overall, I think it would be result in overall savings.
And there's a much less impact, it sounds like, in trying to figure that out as opposed to taking 100 or 136 students, keeping them together and moving them into some place in the district. Thank you.
Dr. Gonzalez.
So I wonder, looking at the transfer, some of these schools have huge percentages. So what would that do? That would, you'd start with just the home students and then allow, so that could change everything for these transfers, these students that are in schools.
So it could, so what I'm hearing is if we did that, some kids that go to Atalaya now may be displaced because kids that are supposed to go to EJ, that are supposed to go to Atalaya that are going to EJ would displace those kids.
That's correct. Any school that is at capacity or close to capacity.
So how many are that?
Well,
Because it might not be as big as we think. It might just be 2 or 3 schools and not the, because I understand, because the board member Gonzalez brings up a good point. I don't want to displace a bunch, like impact 7 or 8 other schools, but if we may only be impacting 1 or 2, like what's the likelihood of kids having to move because we made this decision to not keep EJ together? What tab is that? 3?
Board Member Abeta, so as we look at these numbers, and it'll vary due to the size of the overall class sizes. So right now, and I wish we had that map, but we can see the majority of the students, if we were to rezone, more than likely would end up at Chaparral, right?
And that wouldn't displace any Chaparral kids?
Well, it could. Any Chaparral students who were at some point interzoned in, if we're over the different caps, those students would then be redirected to go back to their home school or apply for a different school. And then we do have, of course, quite a few students in this district that are from, say, Pecos or from Poake, and then they wouldn't have a home school to go to unless they go back to their home district, and they also would have to try to apply for a seat at a different school. So there are repercussions for this. The schools that we see that would probably be affected by this would be, I believe it's Aspen, it would be Wood Gormley. I believe there's only one student that's kind of near El Dorado, so, there in Sunlit Hills. But the majority of the students are around that Chaparral area, so they would be absorbing the majority of the students.
Okay, thank you.
I might add that on tab 3 gives you the program capacity of the schools.
And I'm sorry, Board Member Avita, one other level that we have to consider. That's just the 99 students that are actually zoned for EJ. You still have to take into consideration the other 60-some students that will either have to go to their home zone or apply for a spot in the lottery somewhere else.
And if I may, Mr. Romero, you pointed us to tab 3 and the program capacity, which lists Chaparral at 454 with actual enrollment of 169, a very similar number to EJ, 37%. Program capacity is roughly what we think the number is that school can hold functionally.
Let's talk about the 3 different capacities.
Yeah, please. 3
Mr.
different
Romero, would you talk
capacities.
about the 3 different capacities that we look at, and specifically why we look at program capacity?
So, um, program capacity provides probably the most lenient way to look at a building. When you look at functional capacity, they're talking about square footage versus the number of students that you can have there. When you talk about program capacity, we do look at the programs that are in school, the bedrooms that might not be as well occupied as they could as a full-size classroom. In a 1,000-square-foot classroom can hold 24 students, but there might be programs in there that don't allow for that. So it is like I said, the most lenient way to look at a school's capacity. So that's what we have in front of us on tab 3.
Board Member Blaya, thank you.
Just to add to that, functional capacity, which is a number that's very often used to calculate, actually figures somewhere around 70% actual use of the building at any given time. So it's not 100% capacity of the building or use of the building, and program capacity is even lower.
Thank you. Board Member Blaya.
So we're talking about like buildings, right? We're talking about facilities when we talk about capacities, correct? At least on these things, right? Well, that's capacity in one light, but to me, the more important capacity is the capacity of a school to produce functioning and high-functioning students. Is there a tab in here that'll give us that kind of data to look at proficiency and growth rates of what our district looks like in context of this stuff? Because we're looking at numbers, but we're not talking about the human element about these numbers. And so that's kind of what's missing from all this, because capacity is, we're just talking about a building. We're not talking about the capacity for a teacher, for a principal, for a social worker, for, you know, all the people that are actually doing the work of educating our children. What are our communities doing? And I don't want to use the word school because now we're talking about buildings. And our students and our communities are the ones that we should be talking about in terms of what are we going to do here tonight to improve the capacity of the people actually doing the work. And we don't have that information in here. So is there any way we can get that tonight to see what the performance and proficiency data looks like? So that, it would give another facet to the discussion.
Board Member Blair, let me make sure I'm understanding your question. Are you asking for sort of projected proficiency with combining schools, or?
No, so.
Could we bring up, I'm sorry to interrupt, could we bring up the presentation that you shared with the board that shows our current achievements for math, reading and math? Do you remember that slide? I think that
I do. So our current proficiency at a district level is we're at about 41% proficient in ELA and about 22% proficient in math. If I'm understanding your question, and if I'm not, please forgive me. There are pluses and minuses with regards to small schools. And I've discussed with the board in the past that our small school size does make us vulnerable year over year to large swings in proficiency. Larger numbers of schools with larger number of students tend to have more stable data that would likely progress towards that district average of about 41% in reading and about 22% in math, excluding current school improvement efforts. The other thing to take into account with larger school numbers is that there are more economies of scale in terms of staffing. And so there are more likely capacities to hire additional instructional coaches and EAs and those sort of support staff that often get lost when students are spread across large numbers of schools. If I'm answering your question correctly.
More or less. Maybe we'll have to put a pin on it.
Go ahead.
If we were to go back to the Milagro option, I'm reading the policy that talked about this exact scenario. Years ago, that was adopted, and it talks about not enrolling kindergartners anymore, and phasing out. So would it still be an option to do Milagro and not put kindergartners there? And then you don't have to do the remodeling to create a kindergarten classroom with bathroom? Is that an option? I mean,
So the board, if the board would choose to do consolidation as the option and with the temporary relocation of EJ Martinez for the duration of the consolidation, what it would take, it's a 3-year process, that is a possibility.
okay, thank you.
And Board Member Blea, I really appreciate what you're saying. I feel like I've told the story many times when I came in and there was a lot of talk about program capacity and we weren't talking about how students learn and all of this in 2017. One thing I would say, and I think Beata gave us some really good answers and wisdom from the data there. There has occasionally been a thing that happens where people say, why close our school? We're a good school. Close another school that's not a good school. And I guess I would just say I found that to be one of the worst conversations in this district because and maybe you're asking if there's a school that's really outperforming in terms of student outcome or something like that, and how we think about that, I don't know. But our schools have a variety of different challenges, and again, I think Beata gave a really good explanation about the economies of scale with support and the various different things. But ultimately, we see a lot of proficiency data that tracks to poverty and to English language learning and some of these other factors. And so I'm not sure I entirely understand what you're getting at, but I want to be a little bit careful about the proficiency data comparison of school to school because it often is exhibiting many other things in factors in populations.
Sure.
And again, the small school size and the wildly gyrating data is also an important point.
Thank you, President Noble, and I appreciate the context, but I guess what I'm getting at, I'm not trying to put a school against a school. That's not, this isn't like that Mad Magazine when you had spy versus spy. That's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to say is that we have, in my opinion, right, we're trying to solve a problem. And even if we rezone, Board Member Beta, we're still going to have the problems that we're still going to have. It is the underlying problem that we have as a community is that families who know how to navigate. Families who don't really know how to navigate, don't navigate. Regardless, a lot of it's geographic, a lot of it is affluence, that kind of thing. And you're right, there are a lot of things that factor into these discussions. But if we don't have, in my mind, I need the context on the human side because, and I know what you're saying, and I kind of know where we're at, but we have to look at, when I look at the Midtown schools, they're disproportionately, Salazar, for example, Milagro, and I'm sorry for the emotion about this all, but the difficulty is that we're looking at disproportionate, economically disadvantaged and homeless populations within the Midtown area. And this is simply something that, to me, we have to figure out how to strengthen that. We're not going to do it overnight. We're not going to do it tomorrow. We're not even going to have this solved. But do we want to further cause vulnerabilities within our populations by starting to move things around? That's what I'm afraid of. My biggest fear is that we're going to create bigger vulnerabilities in an already vulnerable population, and that's what I don't want to do. Because we don't know, we're talking about numbers, and we're looking at if everything was all the same, if everybody was the same, and everybody had the same background, had the same everything, we could talk like this. But we don't have that opportunity here. We have, like to your point, we have a very delineated and nuanced profile of our families. And so as we have these discussions, I'm trying to wrap my head around, and I'm having a very difficult time, as is obvious, wrapping my head around what are gonna be what are the opportunities for success, but also what are the other vulnerabilities that we're gonna create by just moving things around, moving numbers around. And that's what I'm kind of afraid of, is that, are we gonna create other vulnerabilities, and are we gonna be looking at this next year saying, crap, man, we shouldn't have done that? You know what I mean? Like, if we start coming up with the long-term plan and we're like, man, we kind of put ourselves in a bad perspective because we were just looking at doing this. From a vulnerabilities and further causing ripples within the Midtown area, are we gonna do that? And I don't have the data to say if we're going to or not. It just doesn't feel like I have that data. We have a lot of data, and this is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. The work that went into this is fantastic, and I think this is really critical, and I think there is a lot of very good context data in here. Very, very good. It's just that I want to see how all this stuff plays together at some point, right? We're going to make a decision tonight, and I feel very confident that we will. I don't know that there is a short-term best decision. I really just don't. I think this is difficult for everybody, and with everybody who's here tonight, hoping that we do something for our community that makes sense. 'Cause that's what everybody's hoping, that we do something that makes sense. And that's what I want to do, but I also don't want to cause further vulnerabilities. And there's no way I'm going to get that assurance tonight, absolutely not. And there's no way that we're going to be able to test our assumptions that we're basing our decisions on tonight, not tonight. But the reality is I'll be honest with you, and maybe this has happened before, but this kind of fine-tooth combing type of stuff, to me, feels like new. And I think this is really good. But I'm trying to figure out how to get the context I need without putting schools against each other. I guess I'm trying to do that as best I can.
Board Member Blaya, one of the things in my experience with public education is that there's a direct correlation between student achievement and free and reduced numbers. You see proficiency rates almost identical to those rates.
To what was the dependency? To what was the contingency? I didn't hear you.
Free and reduced rates.
Oh, okay.
I guess I just, I keep coming back to our policies and our resolutions and these documents that we create in theory, in times that we're not in crisis, to guide us when we have to make hard decisions. And we do have this policy, and I feel concerned because we have shifted conversation from what I think we all unanimously told the EJ community a few weeks ago. And I'm not sure that that's because we have any new data, but regardless, we have a policy that says, essentially, if we're consolidating a school, we either, like, at the minimum, we give them a 1-year grace period, and if not, then our standard is a 3-year period. And so I feel concerned that we're heading down a path that talks about dissolving a school community or reabsorbing them into other schools when that really isn't my understanding of this policy. So that is part of what's been driving the way that I think about this. At the bare minimum, in my mind, this isn't a next year solution. This is a longer term discussion. If we're consolidating that school, we should follow our policy.
So what you're saying, Vice President Brose, is then don't talk about rezoning yet unless it's something that happens over a 3-year period. Or we say it now, but it doesn't go into effect for 3 years. If it went into effect for 3 years, we'd be in compliance with the policy.
That's the way that I've understood the policy, you know, which is a little bit why I pulled back on my Milagro proposition at our last meeting, which was if we're not comfortable saying that that's a permanent thing and we're going to consolidate, we should follow this process that we outlined, if that's not where we want them to be permanently. And frankly, we could do that under any roof, or, you know, whatever it is we decide, we create policy to follow it. And so I feel worried that we're not doing that.
Okay, so would we be following the policy if we said, let's go to Milagro, but that would be temporary, and then give them the notice that it's a 3-year, it's gonna be for the next 3 years. And then after 3 years, if there isn't a permanent solution, like maybe a Midtown Elementary, then EJ is gone. And that follows the policy, we think.
I think
Maybe.
that's an option. I see the need for a Midtown campus. I think our facilities, just what we know now, we see that need. And I think what I heard the board say last week to the CRC is they want the CRC to do that work.
Yes.
And I've spent, you know, time in my brain kind of as co-chair wrapping my mind around what that looks like for the next 6 to 12 months. So I think, you know, I think that's what is ahead of us.
And would we still be in policy if we did that and said, but do not include kindergarten in the Milagro temporary move? Because it looks like everything else, though, if you go Aspen and all these other things we explored, then you're displacing programs and other things. And so, so I guess if it's coming to me, I'll back off on the redistricting thing so that we can, because that's the option I would choose this evening. But you're right, we have a policy for a reason. I think we saw this coming as a district with the declining population. When you look at one of the tabs, since 2015, and like Board Member Gonzalez said, all the schools, the population's declining. We saw it coming. We have a policy for a reason. We have 3 options we've talked about. I think given the discussion this evening, I would make a motion that we temporarily move EJ to Milagro. We exclude kindergarten from EJ, and we work on a permanent solution. And if we don't have one within 3 years, then EJ gets consolidated into other schools and taken out of Milagro. But, and then we, as Vice President Brose said, we get to work immediately with the CRC on a permanent solution for all of the Midtown elementary schools, and not just you know, EJ and Milagro, but we look at Nava, we look at Kearney, we look at Chaparral. And so that would be my motion.
Can we discuss that?
Once we have a second, we can discuss. I'll second for the purpose of discussion.
We have a motion and a second, and now we're discussing. Go ahead, Dr. Gonzalez.
Well, I still think we should keep EJ together, K-6, and I don't know what would happen to those kindergarten students and where they would go. I guess they'd go to whatever their home district.
We're talking about next year's kindergarten students, just wouldn't be enrolled at the school. So it's not
Not a big
affecting
deal.
any kids
Yeah,
that go there.
okay. But, yeah, I think because Milagro is closest to EJ, as far as if you look at the map, Aspen is farther away. The kids, I mean, of course, we do have a lot of transfers into all of these schools. But I just think I'd like to see K, kindergarten, included in Milagro.
Board Member Blair.
So I'm kind of at a loss with the motion in and of itself, although I do think that it's, in terms of without redistricting, to your point, and by looking at the 3-year policy that we have, like this grace period, I don't know why we would get rid of, I say this word wrong, kindergarten, but the reason why is because Nava and Chaparral, we're going to have this discussion in 6 months about those 2 buildings. It's really going to happen, and so we're going to say, oh, well, we're just going to put the new batch of kindergartners, whatever, kindergartners somewhere else?
Well, thank you, Board Member Blair. We save money by not putting kindergarten at Milagro, and it's temporary anyways. So we have a policy that says you should stop accepting kindergartners. One of the big expense with the Milagro is because we have to remodel to create a kindergarten classroom with bathrooms. So I think so there's more than one reason, I guess, from those perspectives. And again, hopefully this is just temporary, and we do end up with a state-of-the-art elementary school in the midtown for all of these students. Chaparral, Nava, EJ.
Well, I fully support that idea. I completely 100% support that idea. But I also want to say that we don't want to, do we know how much we'd save? Do we know how much money we'd save?
The conversion of the bathroom of that total budget is probably about $150,000. The bigger number that kindergarten puts on that cost is the playground, because it has to have a separate facility, and that's probably another few $100,000. So altogether, the kindergarten adds a chunk to it, but it's in those 2 pieces.
Well, and just to clarify, my thinking really wasn't about saving money. It's that's what's in the policy, because it allows for grades to gradually be phased out so that those kids who start kindergarten don't get to 4th grade and have their school closed. They aren't there. So the kids age out of the school essentially if we stop enrolling at the early grades. So that's the way the policy was designed, so as not to impact any kids that are currently enrolled. They get to age out of the school essentially. And I just, I really do, it's very clear to me through all of this and through what we have on paper that Midtown needs an elementary school for all of these kids. And as part of that, I really hope that Milagro gets to be a 6 through 8. I think that's what that school should be in the long term. So I hope that we can kind of keep a lens on that as we go through this work with the CRC.
So, Madam President, there's a motion and a second.
There is, and we can vote in a minute to see if there's a will for that. I guess I would say I had a conversation today where someone said, what about EJ Martinez Chaparral, Nava Kearney, 2 integrated schools of 4? And, I know we're talking a lot about the bigger picture of Midtown. Again, I look at that Nava facility score, and, we've had a lot of conversation about that over the years and the kids there. We do have this policy for a reason. And again, the sort of nuance of not taking enrollment of the younger grades, of rolling things up and really working with the individual families, including on preferential transfers if possible. And I know that change is really hard. And, as we think about the ripple effects, because there are certainly ripple effects, that is giving, I think, everyone some pause in that. I guess I also want to say that over the years and the probably hundreds of hours now I've been in conversations about this, some of what we see, and this is truly meant to be a comment across the board, is adult behavior impacting kids. And, I've heard this in a number of conversations, but I really hope whatever is decided tonight that we have a lot of work to do culturally, anywhere, to ask adults to be adults and get on board and do their best for kids, rather than, I don't know, maybe it's not fair, but rather than holding grudges about what happened or what have you. I really think that no matter what, we're going to need some cultural work, and some call to sort of higher behavior standards to, for all of us to, and the teachers I know do it every day, do the best for kids. But some of the integration pains at Aspen, I don't know about, Milagro and Capshaw, but it has felt as if, the kids adjust fast. And, to really do the work and ask of our district, of the professionals, and of our parents and families that we have, everybody put your big kid pants on, and do what's best for kids, and let's not pass our issues on. Again, kids are resilient, they are adaptable, they evolve. So that's a piece that I guess I've been thinking about a bunch. It's been very important to me that we work on that adult behavior piece. I guess I will say I struggle with this, and I struggle with, how it's going to work at Milagro. And again, the work that emerged out of reimagining and the need for emphasis on our middle school. I guess a question I had was, I think there's an autism classroom that would be displaced that we haven't talked about in the Milagro area, and I wonder if you can speak to that, because we've talked about a couple of the different pieces. And then, I guess my question is about gyms, recess, like how do we think the programming would work in terms of aligning EJ with Milagro? Because, and just to skip to the end, I think it's really problematic, and I don't know that I'm willing to sacrifice our middle school. I'm leaning towards could we do some version of our policy with integrating EJ and Chaparral at the Chaparral site, working to have less duplication of services and spaces, and move towards that with another layer of working with families if there's a desire to transfer, and that sort of preference we've talked about to, again, really get to the nuance of the individual families and limited displacement. I know that's asking a lot, but we have worked so hard to have this middle school, and I don't know if it would be an option to also look at Chaparral's 6th grade. If we're looking at critical mass of making a 6, 7, and 8 school. But I think we need to keep that idea in mind. I'm really focused on, again, what came out of reimagining, which substantially was the need to look at middle grades and do better in middle grades. So treating Milagro as a convenient building is not going to sit right with me I don't think in 10 minutes, in 10 months, or in 10 years. But anyway, so the question here is, Superintendent, if you'd talk a little bit about the autism classroom, any other displacement in the space at Milagro, and how we see the programs potentially aligning of these two different age groups in this option of the motion that's on the table.
Thank you, President Noble. I want to start off with your first question about adult behavior and how do we manage the just the past traumas that people have experienced and the ask of merging two different identities into one building, and how do we honor that identity and continue to be able to grow as a district with some of these things that we're faced. So in order to be intentional with EJ Martinez going into Milagro, we would be bringing in a consultant to be able to help navigate. I think of it as almost like a marriage with stepchildren, that you need somebody to be able to kind of go through what does it look like, what does it mean for us, what does shared spaces look like, if like cafeteria. So obviously the K-6 would not be in the cafeteria at the same time as 7-8. Scheduling would be done in a way that the K-6 and the 7-8 do not, they don't cross paths, if you will. As far as the autism room, was it just yesterday that we were there? Just even yesterday at Milagro, nothing is in stone yet because there hasn't been a decision. So what we have is ideas and we have proposed plans. Without the right people at the table to really work through all of the details, like where does the autism class go, or maybe the 200 wing isn't the right wing for EJ Martinez. Maybe the 300 wing is a better suited, because students will come in and go directly into that classroom from the front door. Our middle schools enter the building from the cafeteria. So there's not a lot of option for cross patterns there, and the EJ Martinez wing would be self-contained. So as far as the autism room goes, I know that, do you want to speak to that? Or there's space and it may be moved, but it may not be moved if we use the 300 wing instead of the 200 wing. It's not, it wouldn't be moved from the school. The one room we won't move is the one that's 200. Because that one was specifically designed for students who have the highest level of needs, with a bathroom, a kitchen, a shower, and we want to make sure that those students would still have access to that room. Wait, let me see. 6th grade, you also asked about moving 6th grade to Milagro as an option. To me, that's part of rezoning or consolidation, that you're rezoning those 6th graders now to a different school, which I'm not sure where policy fits in with rezoning.
But if I'm not mistaken, you just said we don't have a distinct plan to move EJ to Milagro. It might be the 200 wing, it might be the 300 wing.
We started with the 200 wing. That was our original plan as of yesterday. There was some conversation about the 300 wing, which is almost identical to the 200 wing. Different programming.
Go ahead, Board Member Blaya, and then Board Member Beta.
So I like, first of all, President Noel, thank you. Second thing is I like your use of the word convenient building. I like that because that's what we're looking at, is a convenient building. However, it is a convenient building. But if our plan is to, we don't have a plan, but hopefully, because I do like Member Beta's idea of a Midtown Elementary School, and there is space for it, and I think there is an opportunity for that. the difficulty I'm having with all of it and is that we're gonna be making changes to a building, one way or the other. We're gonna be making playgrounds, we're gonna be doing all this stuff. And then if we phase out EJ, well, now we did all this stuff for no reason. But at least if we keep kindergarten alive with EJ, then at least it's like an opportunity. Once we have that, then we could just kind of maybe like shift the community into the new elementary. If we phase it out per policy, well, I'm just not understanding the fit in the 3 years and the policy. I'm not wrapping my head around it very well. And maybe it's because I'm just, you know, new or whatever, but it just doesn't feel like, it feels like we're making a bunch of changes to a building because it's convenient, that's gonna go away, and then we don't have a plan to do anything with all that stuff separately. We put in all these playgrounds, we don't do the bathroom, but we put in the playgrounds, and if we don't do kindergarten, we're still gonna have new playgrounds. And we're gonna be, you know, putting walls up and doing this and doing this other stuff, you know, I don't know how construction works. And then you go in and you say, oh, by the way, now there's nothing here. Now we have all this playground equipment, like the playground equipment over at EJ. It's pretty much brand new equipment at EJ. You pass by, like, man, that's a pretty cool playground. But it's just collecting dust now. And I kind of feel like, although I agree with the premise of adult behaviors impacting kids, I get it, but we are stewards and we have to represent the kids. And it is going to be like, and nobody in this, the funny thing about buildings is that while nobody in here owns the buildings, we all own the buildings because it's our taxes that paid for those buildings. So it's kind of an interesting kind of situation to where, what do we do with the taxpayer money in terms of moving it forward into the future? And if we're going to phase something out, then it doesn't make sense to build stuff. It only makes sense to build stuff if we're going to make it as part of a plan to kind of, you know, kind of maybe shift towards, you know, maybe like the Lafarge area or whatever. I'm just spitballing. But just to have a convenient building to phase out in 3 years, that doesn't feel like we're being good stewards.
Board Member Blea, sixth graders do use playgrounds.
Fair enough.
Board Member Baker?
Thank you. Yeah, well, I think we're using the word convenient because it's easier than making the tough decision, which is to close EJ and rezone the kids to somewhere else. And so any other option we come up with is gonna have costs, we're gonna talk buildings, and the reason why I made a motion for Milagro was because it sounds to me like keeping them at Chaparral doesn't change anything then, and we've been over there, we've seen the conditions, we've smelled the sewer, we've seen there's no rooms, there's no windows in those rooms. I just don't see, or maybe given what President Noble said, how would you make something like that work if we somehow kept them there as she suggested? So it's a better situation than we have now.
I think,
Go ahead,
one thing
Dr.
I think
Gonzalez.
in what we heard earlier is that it's going to take, it wouldn't be till 2028 that we would be able to.
Well, yeah, if they're rebuilding a
Yeah.
whole new wing of the school, that's the time frame.
That's really hard for them. They've already.
Staring at this floor plan, trying to like, okay, so they can't use that whole wing, but we're talking about integrating as a possibility. And so I'm looking at the newer wing and what portion, you know, what could shift? Like, if you're talking about demolishing some of the old wing, does that create more exterior windows? If it's, you know, partially demolished, adults move to certain areas, like, the time is calling for us to be as creative as possible. And so I think we're really trying to push the envelope and think about all of those things.
But again, that's because we don't want to close EJ, and so, I mean, sometimes the hardest decision is the best decision, but it's hard, and so, and it just seems like and we're gonna be here again with Nava probably, or the minute there's a roof at another small elementary, and we're gonna try to to make it work so that community can stay together. And I just, I don't know.
Board Member Blaya, go ahead.
Thank you. Member Beta, I mean, you're kind of speaking to, right, Foucault's razor, right? You say the most obvious answer typically once you get rid of everything is almost always the best answer. And I get it, that you're, and like I said, if we just took it just on surface without nuance, that would be the easiest decision. Not, maybe not the easiest, but the most difficult, but yet the difficulty for me is that it's nuanced again, right? And not only that, but one of the things that I want, and if in the next 4 years I don't even dent the needle, at least I want to say I tried, is our community as a whole is not trusting elected or appointed officials. I'm going to keep coming back to that, and it is a trust thing. So when governing bodies make commitments to the public, I think there is an expectation that the governing body is going to honor that commitment. In all documents that I have read, there has been multiple commitments made to the E.J. Martinez community and to the Chaparral community, for that matter. As school, they were both tagged as schools of innovation. Now, the details around that and all that other good stuff, when we haven't fleshed out, but we did make those commitments as a governing body to those communities. Now, I understand that things change, and sometimes we have to go back and say, hey, look, we have new data, we have to make a different decision. But I also want to make sure that if we're not going to make that decision, if we're not going to honor that commitment, that we have a very strong plan and a very strong reason as to why we're not going to honor that commitment. And that's kind of the problem I'm having right now, is that I believe that both Chaparral and EJ have done very, very admirable jobs of functioning in very, very, very difficult circumstances with a lot of, like, you know, adult behaviors kind of influencing things, to kind of use your adult behaviors. I like that. But it shows the strength of these communities that we should leverage and not kind of just phase out, because both these communities are very strong and have really shown what we are capable of when we kind of try to work together, and we're not really doing that. We're just saying, let's just, I hear you, Member Beta, I totally do, I do. And over the years, I have trusted your judgment in many different circumstances. And I think in terms of just looking at this, you're right. But the nuances to this whole issue make it to where I would like to keep, the plan includes kindergarten. Let's just keep it in the plan because it's already been planned. And let's just do that, because if we don't build a Midtown school, well, then we're going to have to do the same thing with Nava. We're going to have to do the same thing with Kearney or Chaparral. And so at least there's like a facility that makes sense, because somebody did tell me, what are you going to do if you don't do it when it's time for Nava? Well, then, yeah, you're right. I don't have a solution for you unless we build a Midtown school.
Vice President Bozay.
Thank you. I have another question, and I've gone back to the original presentation where we were looking at option 2, and this, you know, we're going deep on this conversation, and so I'm asking maybe a next week question or a next month question, but the pricing on this and the drawings on this center around the idea of keeping 2 separate school communities and not expanding a building to house more kids under, you know, one school. And so, you know, for example, this whole separate drop-off area, and I'm wondering if staff maybe has a breakdown of what those costs are, and what it might be if that were one school community with similar design, but not needing to be separate.
Thank you, Vice President Bozay. What I've heard from the conversation is, what would it take just to merge the 2 schools together at that site currently? And merging those 2 schools together would put them at 74% capacity. Currently, EJ Martinez is using 50% of the school. So that 50% of the school that is, we're saying needs upgraded, that they would be over capacity and they would be bleeding into that section that we want to remodel. So combining those schools would put them over the 50% that Chaparral is housed in by 24%. We have not looked at drawings, but you're absolutely right. There would be a savings because what we have is in this rendition, we have duplicated spaces. So we have duplicated offices, duplicated nurses, duplicated libraries. So the square footage of right-sizing a school for 335 students would look differently than housing two separate schools. Did anyone else want to speak to that, or did I cover it? Do you?
Very well.
Thank you.
So just as a follow-up to that, as far as capacity and numbers, can you say that first part again, but minus sixth grade?
Okay. So I will need help with that in just a second, and if I can follow back up, I just need to, I would say that 28, and then how many sixth graders do you have?
It's 60 total, as far as.
Okay.
Yeah.
34 sixth graders?
It's right here.
Sixth graders. Okay, current fifth graders,
What I
sorry.
heard was 66 total sixth graders between the two schools, if I'm correct.
56.
Of current fifth graders?
Sixth graders.
No, current fifth graders, so sixth grade's moving. 42, okay, thank you. All right, I'm giving you the,
So, Board Member Bozay,
Yes.
Madam President, so are you, then you're talking about combining Chaparral and EJ into one school, and it'd be a K-5, and then taking the sixth graders from Chaparral and EJ and making Milagro a 6-8?
And I'm curious, we have a number here of 23 million to put two separate schools on one site. And I don't know if y'all noticed, but I asked for the presentations to include the lot sizes of these facilities that we're talking about, because I think that that's important when we think about really what space there is for future ideas and plans, and outdoor spaces that kids want to use and we want them to use. And so I don't think that number should be as high as 23 million if we're not doing two separate schools. And what I'm trying to think about is where could we get money from sooner rather than waiting for another bond cycle to do this work, which we know needs to happen rather urgently for all of the Midtown facilities.
Okay, so, Madam President, I'll withdraw my motion regarding Milagro.
Board Member Bose, to answer your question, if we move sixth grade to Milagro from Chaparral and EJ Martinez, the school would be sitting at 65% capacity. So again, 50% of the school is housed by Chaparral.
So still over.
It would be into the area that needs to be rebuilt. Thank you.
So do we need a new motion?
I think that is certainly an option, yeah.
Do you want me to make the motion, or do you want to make the motion? Vice President Bose, it was your suggestion.
I would like to hear a little bit more from staff maybe before we make a motion. I'm trying to understand the left side of the building, the old wing of the building, and what the options are. I know that we went through this with Capshaw, like partial demolitions, what work could happen over the summertime. How do we, can we extend, the HVAC that's being put in over the summer to cover some of those? How do we get windows in? I don't know, like, I'm doing this, like, can admin go here? Can library and computer labs go here? Can art go, can specials go in that part, and all of the core classrooms go in the newer part of the building? I'm not the facility person, and so
And if I may, and I do want to ask for answers to your question, but I heard also something I'd never heard before, which was the idea to use a consultant on an integration with Milagro, and, I think that intentionality in transitioning, and, it might be difficult, I think, to answer your very good question in a fulsome way now. I'm sure we have some decent ideas, and I'd really like to hear them, but again, this idea of using a consultant, really working intentionally to integrate, which would achieve, keeping the kids together, minimal disruption in terms of physical moves, and potentially, looking to even what we passed in the Schools of Innovation and in the bond, the idea of taking the strengths of these communities and providing some real intention and support to maybe provide an integrated solution of kids of the same age and grades, to think about a new sort of merged identity, if you will. You talked about that again minimizes disruption, keeps kids together, and looks towards a more permanent solution, rather than yanking here, yanking there, and spending money to retrofit in between. And before we go to you, I think Sarah asked a good question, and I wanted to weigh in, so maybe.
Right, and I also want to offer up the possibility, because I think that price, one of those estimates also offered the idea of some portables, and so I don't, again, not long-term, but maybe specials happen in portables or something like that, if that part of the building really does need to go, or we need to start construction sooner rather than later. So either or, both of those things.
If it would please the board, I'll have the principal of Chaparral that's been there for a while, like 8 years, I believe? Seventh year, so.
Thank you for the opportunity. So previous to the integration of EJ, we were utilizing that other wing with great success. I think our teachers were content, they were happy, that was their home. I'm thinking one of our 6th grade classes in particular. Oh, that was really her home. If we were to be utilizing the entire building again, I would definitely prioritize classroom teachers to be in the exterior classrooms, the classrooms with windows. Those interior classrooms that do not have windows, we would use for ancillary services, for perhaps speech, things like that. I will say that the art room on the old side of the building is much nicer than the art room we're currently using. So there would be some shifting of spaces, prioritizing classes that were going to be in there 100% of the time, or students that were going to be in there the full school day.
Thank you. That's super helpful. I don't know if you guys have anything to add.
Such a moving target.
Yeah, no, I know. I know.
Think about it.
But on that point, President Noble, what are the superintendent's thoughts about a K-5 combined Chaparral EJ and a 6-8 Milagro? Can we make that happen between now and next school year? Or start working towards it?
I do have concerns about the 6th grade and us moving 6th grade without being really intentional about the numbers. I fear that I see a pretty big loss of student ADM in the transition from 6th grade to 7th grade. And I fear that if we say right now we have enough students in Chaparral and EJ Martinez to sustain 2 classrooms at Milagro, if we lose any ADM at all, you could only have 1 classroom of 6th graders by themselves there. And I don't think that's the best thing for students. I would want that to be in a longer term plan where we can be really intentional with the number of students that we would be moving in order to sort of counterbalance the loss of enrollment that that you've seen over the years at any of those middle school transitions. You asked me, can it be done? It can be done.
So, and then, so if we didn't do Milagro at this point, a 6-8, is there enough capacity to combine the 2 schools at Chaparral? At K6?
So with the side that EJ Martinez is on, it does require extensive renovation. It is, I would say, at the end of its useful life. When we look at taking the pipes out and replacing the pipes, the air conditioning units, right now we have 1 HVAC that's really slotted for the Chaparral side. The more that we expand into that side, those problems aren't going to go away, and so the portable option would have to be considered if you wanted to be able to do that, because we do need to do renovations to that building, and it will come at a cost.
But some of the things that would be eliminated, or some of the problems that would be eliminated by doing that, is you don't have 2 separate drop-offs anymore, you don't have 2 separate lunches, you don't have, you know, some of the things I heard when I visited the school, and you don't have this competition anymore within the building of two schools.
So-
And you still keep, in a sense, you don't just keep the EJ community together, the kids together, you expand it, you make the family bigger, in a sense, and you go to, like President Noble said, instead of having the mediator or counselor or whatever at Milagro, you have it at that school. And to work that transition, you do that program there with that community.
Board Member Bland.
Is there any appetite to talk about Nava 6th graders?
No. I'm sorry.
Fair. That's why I asked. I asked if there's an appetite for it.
I was going to suggest that it could be a discussion that's had with them to what's their appetite, interest, would they take a tour and check it out? And I don't feel like we need to force anybody to do anything, but what, you know, why not?
And Dr. Gonzalez, if I may, the reason why I'm thinking about that is because the reason why, I've been thinking about this a lot. You know, I grew up almost literally across the street. Once we left Alta Street and we moved to the Rancho Seringo neighborhood, you know, I know that area extremely well, and some of my old families are still in that area that I knew, and a lot of them aren't there no more, but some of them are still there. And as I look at the changes, and I kind of just sit over there sometimes, and I just think about this, if we're going to be doing a Midtown Elementary, that's K through 5, to help with some of the enrollment, we can start that kind of motion towards it now. And I know it's very difficult, but if we are going to look at a K through 5 Midtown Elementary, and then make Milagro the 6 through 8 kind of junior high, or whatever you call it, then at least this is like an opportunity to start looking at that. That's my thought process.
No, we would do that afterwards. We have to make this decision now, and then we talk about that afterwards.
Okay.
Is my suggestion.
Fair enough.
May I speak to that? One of the things that I thought of, like, this has been my world for eight months now, of really diving in deep and trying to figure out the solutions and the long-term plans. And originally, my first thought was the 6th grade's moving to Milagro. What I discovered as I went through looking at our small schools that we have, a school like Nava, that when you take away schools, you're almost that saying robbing Peter to pay Paul, because now Nava, who has, if you look at the FTE, they have like a .3 counselor and a .2 counselor. Now that you've taken those resources, so now instead of having a counselor 2 days a week, they only have a counselor 1 day a week. So it really, when we start taking resources away from our already tiny schools, that has a huge impact on those schools. And so it needs to be very intentional with when it's a bigger picture than just moving sixth grade.
Okay, perfect, thank you for that context.
But if I'm not mistaken, to some extent, we are talking about, and I don't know, you know, I get that it's nuanced and it takes a lot, but the larger problem in some ways is we have so few economies of scale and we have so many point something supports here, there, and everywhere. And so truly in looking to solve the larger problem, we might want to stop, you know, spreading ourselves so thin. And it's, you know, I think we've seen some emails about, you know, we heard about the supports, about the different programs, music and art and all of that, and how we really offer these things that engage our students, that are the things that they tend to fall in love with, which are often the extras, the specials, the music, the art. I think, you know, that is part of the longer term thing. Okay, so.
Do you want a motion?
I love it. Let's hear it, Board Member Beta.
I move that we combine the two schools, Chaparral and EJ, into one, and we do everything we can to make it work. And then we'll start working on the bigger picture and all these different ideas and suggestions and possibilities through the CRC immediately.
I'll second. Dr. Gonzalez.
So they would be in that same kind of situation that they're in for 2 more years?
No,
They've already
we're
been
gonna-
like that for, I don't know how
Well,
long.
no, because they won't be two separate schools. The kids would be combined into 6th grade, 5th grade, 4th grade. It'd be
Yeah, but
one
they're
school.
they're still all the same school, students in the same school that's not.
But there's not 2 separate drop-offs, there's not 2
Oh, I understand
lunches,
that.
there's not,
That makes sense, but the
Yeah.
students, there's still those classrooms that are not.
right, but
Right,
that's,
and then-
we've got to figure out if it's portables or what we do to improve the situation for everybody. That's what we do, and that's where our immediate resources go.
Is this motion keeping sixth grade at this facility?
Yes. But again, we'll look at that and all these other things we discussed this evening through the CRC moving forward.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Questions? Ready to vote? Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or otherwise? Opposed? Versus abstention? You're opposed, just to be clear, because I didn't do a roll call here. So we have 4 votes in favor, 1 vote against. The motion carries. There we are. Thank you. Okay. We will move on to advanced planning. Superintendent, anything we need to change?
No, there isn't at this time, thank you.
Okay, so we're looking at a CRC meeting, sure to be a banger next week. And then our next meeting would be a study session. I do want to talk about that. Would the board be amenable to doing an executive session at either 4 or 4:30 ahead of our study session on the finance subcommittee on,
What day is that again, Madam President?
It's February 19th.
February 19th is probably a Thursday, I'm guessing.
And President Noble, I imagine that you will have an executive session. It's almost a month in between board meetings, and I believe we might have some items that we have to discuss in executive session anyway. So you might need, if you're wanting to do a separate item, you might need to do it earlier. Mr. Granada, do you know how long?
Well, we
an
could just do
average-
one executive session, but if we need to do lawsuits, we can do lawsuits
Okay.
and I think other items.
Okay.
Currently, I don't have any,
But I'm available if you need it.
Okay, Dr. Gonzalez, do you know if you'd be able to do that? It looks like it might be, it's the last day. Does it end at, no, it is at noon on Friday or Thursday? Friday.
And that same, this is a finance study session, and we'll talk about budget. Is that the intent? Okay. Yeah.
All right, so Dr. Gonzalez is a big maybe. Any other thoughts from the board on an executive session? We all right, probably to schedule that? Okay. Any preferences on whether it's 4 or 4:30 for executive? 4:30 says
4:30.
Dr. Gonzalez, okay. So we'd like to do it, ultimately list the time as 4:30 for an executive session, 5:30, and we'll list it as a finance subcommittee, so that we can do our budget stuff and the subcommittee that we're supposed to do which is, this board does, the finance subcommittee is a committee of the whole, just to say,
Right.
which is why we notice it that way. Yeah, go ahead.
President Noble, thank you. Did we ever talk about beginning work on a strategic plan and a long-term plan? Did we say like what our timeframes are or anything, or is that like later meeting discussion? I'm just confused as to process.
I think could benefit from an updated conversation on that in terms of process, so perhaps we can put that on a board discussion and possible action. I'd support that of sort of a strategic plan update.
And I'll just say that at the next board meeting, I didn't know that we didn't have a regular board meeting before our second CRC
Yeah,
meeting.
2 CRC meetings.
Yeah, so we might have to look at that, because two things. I would like to have, at our next regular meeting, I'll be done with the vaping resolution that I've been working on forever. And I've been working on this kind of work plan for the CRC for the project that we discussed at our joint study session, and I want to share that with the board, I figured during a meeting, and make sure that the board agreed. If there were any edits and changes that we needed to make, then we could do that. Just so that the scope is clear and we stay on track and produce what needs to be produced for the board to make decisions, those good recommendations that we need to get to. So.
Why did we cancel February 12th? Do you recall?
Yes. I am out of town.
Okay. All right.
So we maybe we'll adjust CRC based on that. I don't want us to have a meeting on the 18th if we haven't approved the work plan.
Okay. We have a loose advance plan, yes?
Yes.
Good. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much for the work tonight. Thank you, team.
Juan, do you know anybody that will want to be on audit committee?